I have a unique story, and we were talking about this earlier, is that I traditionally did go to the route of getting a degree, um, being a full-time worker employee at a firm, like an architectural firm. I studied architecture for 5 years, got my bachelor's in architecture, and was on the route of doing um my my licensing exam so I can be a fully licensed architect. But life doesn't go the way that you would think that it would go. And I do want to start off by saying that my start of like when I first held a camera wasn't as significant as other people would like say it's significant, because I've always been this gamer slash creator slash artist slash whatever you want to call. I never had a distinct title for myself. And that's why I think the title of architecture really encompasses what I am, because what I learned about in architecture school is that we wear so many hats that when it comes to the design aspect is that we have to think about who we're designing for, what we're designing, and how it's going to function and benefit those who are going to embody or are going to be using the space, right? So when I first held a camera, it was when those camcorders. That's why when in the last episode I asked you, you actually remember your camera, because I don't. Like I held a camcorder, maybe like a point and shoot to like take some pictures digitally. Because I remember my mother, God bless her, like she loved taking pictures of us when we were kids. Like she used like
That's so
the
cute.
you know the old like films where like you have to take it to like either like a pharmacy or like a CVS to get it developed and stuff. So my mom
To
loved,
this day, people still do that all
yeah,
the
but
time.
my
you're
mom,
saying.
like that was her thing. Like she loved taking pictures of us, loved what's it called? Develop these films, because like she would hold those memories. Like I still have like a box on boxes filled with just like of those photos. And when we got into the digital age, my mom stopped using those cameras. So it kind of fell onto me to like start taking those photos, just because
Mm.
my parents always knew me as the guy who just loved to play and finick with things. Like one of like the memories that I remember, like the early memory of like me finicking with like a device was actually I would like take cameras and actually break them apart. Not like break them as in physically break them,
But
but like
dissect them in a sense.
exactly, and figure out the parts and pieces of it.
That's
So
so
you can
interesting.
think of it like I was looking at the technical side of it without actually knowing what goes together. So when like using a camera, I would understand like how it works, understand the mechanics behind it. But like when it came to actually framing the shots, like doing the composition, that was not in my comprehensive like mindset at the time when I was taking these videos. And at the time when YouTube came to place, I actually like secret about me is like I did have a YouTube channel when I was back younger, like when I was
Oh,
13.
so did I.
Like
Top secret.
no, but like it was something that I was proud of. Like we were at first it started off as an AMV video type, which is anime music videos. So we take music and use at the time what was not final, it was Windows Movie Maker. And we would
The
put it
oldest
together,
of the old.
and it would take us weeks to make one video.
Yeah.
And then like we would put it on. Like I remember my friend Ahmed, funny enough, he used to make a lot of those, and he would get like at the time he would get like millions of views, right? And it's insane because millions of views
Really?
back then, like it was hard to get.
Oh, it was astronomical.
Yeah, no, it was hard to get. And especially for videos like those now, they're very easy to get, but like at the time it was hard to get. And I remember like he's still like he's able to log on, see the view counts, and they kind of like they took out the music that he used, because now it does make sense with the cuts and stuff like that. But anyway, so that was like my kind of start of like being interested in it. And then like for projects in school, like for extracurricular projects, we used to do like we had this film festival that we did, right? It was like some bullshit like film festival thing where like we were the only people who made a film.
Was this high school or middle school?
It was technically middle school because I didn't go to a traditional high school. I went to like a hybrid of like, it was a private school that had from 7th to 12th grade. So I remember I was in the 7th grade and we made this film about this apocalyptic world because YouTube was, I think it was like 2 years after YouTube like was a thing that we used that to our advantage in school, that like we wanted to make a film for this film festival that we had that we were the only entry in. So we definitely won for actually doing something. But like, it still didn't click to me that's what I was going to do, right? And it still doesn't click to me, or it doesn't really resonate to me saying that I'm a filmmaker, even though I am to a certain degree, right? So going through school, like through high school, like I went to a very like I said, it was like a hybrid private school where it was all technical. Like that's all they did. Like anyone who graduated from that school was either a lawyer, doctor, engineer, or a pharmacist. There was no room for doing anything in the creative aspect. So when I told them that, it was actually funny because I didn't even want to be an architect at first. It was the fact that my mom was like, "You're great at math. You're great at computers. You just love to finick with things. Why don't you be an architect?" And it wasn't until I went to the architecture program for like a visit that I got interested in it. I'm like, you know what? I can see myself doing this for life, because they did a lot of like 3D modeling, a lot of like physical modeling, and I love that because like you get to express yourself in ways that like normally people can't express themselves, right?
It parallels to how you were always finicking with a camera and
Exactly.
picking things apart because you wanted to see how it worked.
Exactly.
This is the professional version of that.
Oh, no, absolutely. So that's why I was like, you know what? Like, I can say as a profession, because like, keep in mind, like, I grew up in like the mindset of I had to do something like that was in the realm of engineering. And till this day, my father will not like admit that architecture is a design or an artistic way of seeing things. Like, he thinks it's just engineering. Anyway.
As parents do sometimes.
Absolutely. But so I got the architecture program, and it was funny because I vividly remember my first like day there, and them talking about like how we're supposed to, like, I remember my what are they? The first year coordinator. His name was Daniel 𝐅𝐎𝐋𝐋𝐿. Daniel 𝐅𝐿𝐋𝐿. And this man, like, God bless him, because like he was my second semester studio professor, and he taught me the principles of architecture that kind of stuck with me till this day. And the first thing that he said was, everything that you learned from K to 12, you guys remember that, right? Like, yeah. He's like, I want you to take all that knowledge and shove it out the window. You don't need it for architecture. And I'm looking at him, I'm like, so you're telling me I didn't need 12 goddamn years of my life?
I feel like that's the best type of teacher, though, because Doc said the similar things to me about just take all that away. We're focusing on what we're here to do right now.
Right. Because like like those were the years that you develop, like he put it in a way where it's like, those are your years that you're developing your character, like who you are and how you come up with logics, right? But these next 5 years, you're going to develop who you are as a profession, how you're going to, as a creator, as an architect, right? And that's the key word of who I am, is architect. Because architecture to me, when I first went in, is differently how I think. It's differently than what I think about it now. Because when I thought it was about building schematics, drawing like construction drawings, all these like technical things, in actuality, it isn't. When I thought about it as being the design of how you structure a building, or the creative side of structuring a building, it's actually the organization of everything and anything. So with that being said, like it made me think about like architecture is really what embodies me, what I am. I'm an architect. So it wasn't until it was in still my first year, we were taking pictures of like the models that we designed, right? Because we 3D model it, we render it, and it becomes like a beautiful 3D image, right? But now we had to physically model and then take pictures. So I just snapped a quick picture, like, yeah, I don't need to worry about it. Then like it was my modes teacher who taught me like, no, you need to get an actual professional camera. You need to take the models in like different lighting situation to mimic like how sunlight hits it, natural light, or
Makes so much sense.
artificial lights. So I'm like, okay, let me see how it goes, right? So I'll never forget my father bought me a Canon. It was a point and shoot. It was a Canon point and shoot, and I remember that vividly because of the fact they asked me change the lens, and I was like, how do I change the lens? And keep in mind, like I was 19 at the time, so like you're talking about like almost 10 years ago. Like I'm trying to like figure it out, and I'm like, wait, it doesn't change the lens, and they're like, no, it's a point and shoot. I'm like, oh, okay. And being me, the technical
That's
guy,
amazing.
I had to figure out like what does a point and shoot mean, right? So I figured it out. And it's actually funny because when I showed my friend who is a dentist now, he was the one who actually got me into the actual profession of photography.
How so?
How so is that he actually loves to take car pictures. He's not a car photographer, but he's had the love for cars. I remember like his first car was what's it called? A BMW 330 Xi 2006. I'll never forget that because like he always customized it. Like literally it's been with him for like maybe like 7 years until like it died. But I remember that was like the first car I took pictures of with the camera that I officially started using as a professional, which was a D5500, and that was by
Canon?
Nikon.
Nikon.
Yeah. Nikon. I started off with a Nikon.
Okay.
The reason why I started off with a Nikon because I actually appreciated Nikon's like old pictures. Like if you see the pictures back in the 70s that were
Totally.
done by Nikon, gorgeous.
Yes.
And I'll never forget the Ashton Kutcher commercial where he was doing like taking pictures with point and shoots. I was like, definitely Nikon is my choice of cameras, which isn't now, but like we'll get to that later.
Totally.
So
I wanted to ask, so you went all through college as an architect, right? You graduated as an architect. Where did photography or videography seriously come into play after that?
okay, so where it seriously came out to play was it's actually funny because like in my 4th year of architecture school, because like keep in mind it was still in architecture school, I took an elective studio class, which was it was sort of like a break from architecture in our like architectural program where you're doing something that relates to architecture but doesn't. So I actually took a film course. So in that film course, I realized that a lot of architects back then were also directors. So to me, because of the way they composed like the pictures, the quality, and like how everything comes together, the storyboarding, because that's what you did in architecture school. You storyboarded a less like a narrative that would get the user journey from one place to the next on like because like that's the whole point of architecture is that in school, not I don't know now because it's not how it is back in the real world, but in school they taught you that you have to take the user into a journey. There's a narrative from your concept down to your final model. Like what was it that made you think about the way you think? And that's why like if you notice sometimes I'm very philosophical by the way I take pictures just because like how my mindset is right now. And in that film course, I was actually, funny enough, I didn't mess around with the camera too much. We did film a lot in that semester, but I actually was focusing more on animation.
Hmm.
So I did like after they modeled like an environment, I would take it, animate people in that space, and try to like have people like
That's amazing.
yeah, do weird things. And I still remember the program because I still use it till this day, which is Cinema 4D.
Is that kind of how you create your 3D models of certain things now, like for your lens and things like that?
So, okay, so my process for that is that I take it into a Rhino 7 right now. I believe that's the latest one. And that's where I do all my modeling.
Got it.
Then take it, if I want to animate it, take it to Cinema 4D. And it wasn't until after a couple years after architecture school and after like doing photography for a little bit, I realized, wow, I can use real life like examples to really make my animations pop. Because if you like think of it as like a studio space, that's what Cinema 4D is. It's a studio space, but in a virtual space that you would like really set it up so you can take like really compelling like animations. And that's what I did back then, right? While doing that, I did take a photography course.
At your school?
Yeah, it was a class. It was like an elective class that I had to take. I had to take any class. So I was like, you know what, let me do photography because I'm learning about cinema, I'm learning about photography. And that's where it led me to really like pursue like a minor in cinema.
So you ended up minoring in cinema?
Yeah. I have
Interesting.
a
didn't know
minor in
that.
cinema. Yeah.
Wow. Because when I met you, you had been out of college for a few years. You were an actual architect working a 9 to 5 in architecture. You had a boss, you know what I mean? And
Right.
it's so interesting to see that in the 2+ years that I've known you, you are now your own boss and are a full-time freelancer.
Yeah. Well, full time to a certain extent.
To a certain extent.
To a certain
Yes.
extent. Because which I'll get to my next point is that like it's interesting, like I don't call myself like certain things. I call myself an architect, but on the retrospect of drawing architecture. So I'm trying to remember where I left off because like it's just that train of thought.
So you
like,
took that photography course, right?
yes,
in
yes,
school.
it was in school. It was still at the school that I graduated from, and I actually graduated with the minor of cinema and the Bachelor of Architecture. While that summer, I was doing working full time and stuff like that. I still had a good friend of mine who moved to California 2 years afterwards. I was telling that we should get started on YouTube because I've been watching a lot of like going back and forth on the commute. I've been watching a lot of YouTubers and stuff like that, and I was like, I have a camera. I love gaming. Like one of the things I remember watching was Game Grumps all the time while I was doing like architectural stuff. So I was like, you know what? Why not like start a YouTube channel? Like start getting into film. And then for me, like it's not that I'm a perfectionist. It's that I want to know the technical side behind things. And it's actually where I started learning these more technical things. I was like, damn, like this is what I learned in cinema. And like, so I'll never forget like the fall of 2017. That's when I like declared like, hey, I'm going to do this like part-time / freelance stuff. Like I have the equipment, I have the eye, why not get into it? And I'll never forget like the because I said it while we were at like in the middle of a party at my friend's place, and I was like, dude, I'm going to definitely do it, right? They all looked at me like, no, just stick with architecture. I'm like, I didn't say I was going to leave architecture. I said that I was going to do it at the
So they
same time.
immediately just kind of shot it down.
Absolutely. And that's where it put into perspective like who your true friends are, because like in this journey, like you'll realize who your true friends are. And that's where like, I'm like, you know what? I'm still going to do it because it's a passion of mine and I want to get really good at it, you know?
And it doesn't mean that they're a bad friend or bad person. It just means that those type of people don't think like creatives.
Absolutely.
Because, they don't have that same mindset. of wanting to aspire for something different and, you know, not something that is the typical career that everybody's into now and that everybody's
Absolutely.
doing. Like,
And I'll never forget, like, it wasn't until 2 months afterwards. It's funny because, like, everyone who starts off, they don't start making a paycheck or, like, that big break to, like, until later on. I got my big break 2 months afterwards.
that's crazy.
So, and it wasn't, like, something like I was expecting it. Like, I remember, the radio station hit me up that, like, I do work for now. They asked me, if I wanted they saw my Instagram, I had like a personal connection with them, and they told me, "Hey, do you wanna cover one of our parties? We can't pay you, but, like, do you wanna, like, do, like, the highlights and stuff like that?" I was like, "Sure, I'll do it," right? So they had, like, a big singer back from, like, Syria or something like that, who they did an interview for. I recorded that, recorded the videos and stuff like that. Literally, I was so excited because this was, like, the first, like, official gig, but, like, an unpaid gig, but I was really happy with it, right? And I went home, edited the whole thing that same night, and sent it to them. They loved it, right? But, like, because I wasn't getting paid for it, I gave them the notion, like, "Hey, I'm gonna put my logo on it, and I'll put your logo too on it, but I wanna make sure to put my logo on it," right? And I gave it to them, they posted it up, they got, like, a lot of views from it, all that stuff, and a couple weeks later, I got hit up by a random number. When I answered it, it was the owner of the restaurant that we filmed at, and they were like, "You were the one who did the video?" I'm like, "Yeah, that was me." They're like, "Okay." They're like, "Can you remove the logos and all that stuff on there? Because I wanna post it for on their page." I'm like, well, the thing is, like, you would have to" like, keep in mind, this is the first time I've been hit up by someone who asked me, like, they wanna use my work
Mm-hmm.
as something to be promoted on their content, so and I remember they said that don't take off your, like, watermark from anything unless they pay for it. So the first instinct that I said was, well, you would have to pay for it to get taken off, right? And he said, how much? And I spewed the first number that came into my head, right? I said 5,000. And he goes like, done.
Bro.
So that's when, like, literally, like, I paused for a second, right? I paused for a legit second because this is me. Like, keep in mind, like, it's not like I'm saying, like, I started, like, making money after that point, but the fact that
But this is your first gig.
exactly. It's one of those things where, like, once I saw it, I'm like, you know what? I can see myself doing this, you know? It didn't take that much effort. I gave them, like, a good product that they wanted to see,
Absolutely.
something that they promoted. And keep in mind, I wasn't a professional. Like, I didn't call myself a professional at the time. And I told them that was the price, and they loved it and they wanted it. They didn't argue. They gave me the check. I was happy to give them the video. Will I be happy with how, like, the video turned out? No, but, like, to be honest, like, I still, like, prideful of that video because, like, that's the first video where, like, I actually saw a paycheck that came out of it, but not immediately. So
But and the amazing part about that is that you knew your worth in a sense from the beginning. You did not, by any standard, depreciate your worth for the intimidation of a client. You said, I don't care if you own a restaurant. In your head, you're like, I'm still worth this much.
exactly, and there's a really famous quote that, like, I stick by till this day, which is, "It doesn't matter how you get the job done, it matters who's behind the job."
Hmm.
Um, and it's like a really, like, long story, but, like, I'll sum it down short because just for the time, and we'll end with this, is that there was, a ship that kinda, like, broke down, and they didn't know what to do, so they called for an engineer because they didn't know what the hell went on. They had their, like, techs look at it, no one knew, so they called in up an engineer. The engineer took a quick look at it, came back with a hammer, banged a couple things, and it started to work. A week later, he sends the invoice, and the invoice is for $10,000. And the owner of the ship was like, well, you just banged a couple of things. He said $2 for the hammer and $9,998 for my knowledge. So
That's crazy.
When you put it in that perspective, if you devalue yourself as someone who like the amount doesn't matter. It's how much you think you're worth it for that specific client or whoever it is. And that's why, like,
100%.
when a client comes up into me and asks me how much is for this, it's not about like me simply giving them, oh, this is the package, this, that. Because no, like, there's a lot that goes into it. The storytelling, the sort of what they want, what they need. Like, I would do them injustice if I just shouted out a price. Hey, this is my price. Do you like it or not? No, I want to know the story. I want to know what I'm creating for, because it will ultimately make me want to work with the project, or two, like, just not work with the project and just receive a paycheck at the end of the day.
Mm. And I think that honestly relates a lot to another episode that we are going to be filming in the future, which touches a lot on how to price yourself as a freelance, photographer, videographer, stylist, anybody in the fashion or entertainment or media industry. Learning how to price yourself is so incredibly important. And it's something that you've helped me with over the years, because especially being a woman in the industry, you sometimes question how much is acceptable to charge. And you have always said to me, don't think about that. Whatever you think you're worth, that's your price. And
No,
that's
absolutely.
what you said.
Because like I said, like I'm saying again and reiterating over and over for those who have this issue, is that whatever you think you're worth, that's what you price yourself out to be. Like, even if it was just 2 gigs or 1 gig or barely a gig that you had, price yourself to what you're worth it. People who will support you will end up supporting you and pay that price. Those who didn't want to pay that price, well, that's your answer. They didn't want to support you in the beginning, because no one will ever pay a price if they don't think it's worth it. And anyone's going to pay that price if they think it's worth it. So, like, for those like for example, friends who have like their own brand, who do their own thing, I don't ask for a discount. I ask for the full price, because I'm supporting who they are. I want to support those who are actually making it. And if I am truly their friend, I'm going to support them by paying their full price. I'm not going to ask them for the discount. There's no such thing as the family friends discount. Family friend discount is that full price, because if they want to support you, they will support you.
Mm-hmm. If they want to support you fully, they're not going to ask for the friends and family discount. They're just going to ask for your rates.
Absolutely. And honestly, one of the things that when I was starting was, I actually got a gig where like the guy was like, oh, I'll pay you $300 after 8 months of work, like 15 days being there, just recording like a soccer thing. He's like, oh, and since I'm your first friend client, we're going to do it for $300. I'm like, all right, like, at least, like, I was like, all right, whatever. Like, at least if you give me, he's like, no, we'll pay you after we're done. So I was like, you know what? That's how I know, like, how I was worth to that friend.
Yeah.
But that's a topic for another day. And I think it's about that time we close it out. So
absolutely. Thank you guys so much for listening to Omar's story and this episode.
Absolutely. And there's more to it. And as an architecture professor of mine said, he's been in 30 years in architecture and still barely scratching the surface. So I want to say, I've been in this profession for 10 years and I'm barely scratching the surface.
There it is.
And with that, hope you guys liked this episode. If you liked it so much, you can hit that subscribe button.
Do it right now.
The like. Follow us on Instagram, Twitter, and is the Facebook still on?
It is still on, Omar. After 3 episodes in, you're asking for the 3rd time. Yes, it is definitely still up there.
I don't know. I barely look at Facebook, you know?
It's all good.
If you guys look at Facebook, please hit that like button on Facebook, follow us. And see you all for the next episode.